welcome back to The Project. Well, the world's Me Too have helped to take down serial abusers, opened our eyes to widespread sexual harassment and shown survivors across the world that they are not alone. It's the defining social movement of our times, but its roots go back more than a decade.
October 2017, actor Alyssa Milano posts a tweet that will become a global rallying cry.
If you've been sexually harassed or assaulted, write Me Too as a reply to this tweet.
Stop the violence! Stop the rape! Stop the violence! Stop the rape!
I will say it right now out loud. Me too.
We are pure, we are strong, we are brave, and we will fight!
Inspired by the growing number of victims speaking out, Me Too empowers even more to bravely share their stories, bringing down some of the most powerful men in the entertainment business.
Harvey Weinstein, charged with rape and sexual assault in New York.
But long before it was a verb or even a hashtag, Me Too began as one woman's plan to make a difference at a very local level.
In 2006, frustrated with all the sexual violence that I saw in my community, I pulled out a piece of paper and I wrote Me Too on the top of it.
A youth worker and abuse survivor herself, Tarana Burke envisioned something centred solely around victims, not perpetrators. Her Me Too program involves supporting young women locally to share their story and heal.
I could never imagine this. I could never have envisioned something that would change the world. I was trying to change my community.
So 13 years later, what does the Me Too founder make of where we are today?
Well, Tarana Burke is currently in Australia being honoured with the Sydney Peace Prize, and she joins us now. Tarana, thank you so much for joining us. There's really been two incarnations of Me Too. Everyone thinks it started a couple of years ago with Alyssa Milano, but as we heard just then, you actually wrote those words, Me Too, back in 2006. When you did that, what did you actually envision at the time?
Well, yeah, I wrote the words before 2006, but it was in 2006 that we kind of made it formal. And then it was a way to create space for survivors to exchange empathy and also to declare that we exist, that we need to be seen and heard and believed. And I believe it's the same today.
And then in 2017, Alyssa Milano used those words and in fact very quickly became a hashtag. What do you think is the meaning behind what she has done and where she's taken it?
Well, when Alyssa Milano tweeted the call to action, really, which is what it was in a similar way that we had been using it, which is for survivors to declare that they exist, to talk about the things that had happened to them because so many people don't believe that it's true. And the sheer number of responses lets us know that this is a bigger problem than what most people are willing to believe.
So just to clarify, that was just a pure coincidence. Alyssa Milano wasn't aware of your movement at that point.
No, she herself had no knowledge of my work or that this work had started prior to her putting out that call to action.
Obviously, the power of the Me Too movement is this idea of providing a safe space for people to stand up and say, this has happened to me too. What advice would you give someone who's struggling to come out with their story?
Don't. I think if you are struggling to come out with your story, then you should really think hard about if it's time or not to come out with your story. There's nothing that says that people have to tell their stories. There's nothing that says that people have to say or declare Me Too in order to be a part of the Me Too movement. And I think struggling with whether to come forward or not is a perfect indication that you may not be ready. It's a big deal to disclose. It's not a small thing to let the world know about some of the worst things that ever happened to you because people aren't really careful with our stories. They aren't careful with our feelings. And you can open yourself up to a lot of things. So I think struggle is a sign that you should respect what that means and really consider what it's going to do to you and how it's going to take a toll on your life before you make that decision. People who want to tell their stories need to know that telling your story doesn't mean it has to be big and public and it has to be validated by hundreds of people. Telling your story can mean writing it in your journal. It can mean telling it to one friend. It can mean writing a poem or drawing a picture. I think we have to shift this idea that telling your story is the start of publicly and being validated by tons of people is what it means to heal, or there's some kind of heroism in that. And I just don't believe that. I think that survivors need to get the story out of their bodies, meaning you have to say it out loud. Tell yourself in the mirror. If you don't have the courage to tell a lot of people, go into a quiet place and tell the story to yourself first. Because most of us don't even tell it to ourselves. We don't want to think about it. We lock it away in a place and we put it on the shelf and we don't think about it again. Be gentle with yourself. Take your time and it'll come out the way it's supposed to come out when it's supposed to come out.
Tarana, what role do men who want to be part of the solution rather than the problem have in the Me Too movement?
Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about Me Too is that it's a women's movement. So men's first role in the Me Too movement is as survivors. The first place that men have in this movement is to stand up just like women or people who identify in other ways to say that they have experienced sexual violence. And we have to be really, really careful to not just pigeonhole this as a movement for women because sexual violence doesn't discriminate and neither can we. And for men who are bystanders, who are advocates, who have loved ones, or who are just concerned about living in a world where sexual violence is so prevalent, there's lots of ways that they can contribute, right? The same thing that women can do. We can start with examining our own behavior, looking at the ways that we uphold rape culture, because rape culture is what creates the space for violence to happen. So if men want to play an active role in affecting the way sexual violence is prevalent in the world, think about the way you respond to sexual violence or even rape culture. Do you laugh at rape jokes? You know, do you have a friend in your crew that's always talking crudely about women, it's disrespectful to women? Do you make women uncomfortable? Has a woman told you that you make her uncomfortable and you've laughed it off or made it into a joke? I think the first thing men can do is a little bit of self-examination and then have some conversations with each other.
There's an accused abuser in the White House. There's another one on the bench of the US Supreme Court. Countless others in positions of power. Surely that's disheartening.
Well, first of all, the person in the White House is not an accused abuser. He's a self-professed abuser. You know, he said it himself, so we can only use his own words. It is disheartening to some degree, but also I am willing to bet dollars to donuts that we have had abusers in the White House before and on the Supreme Court before. We just didn't know about it. So to some degree, I feel like knowing about it puts a little bit of power in our side, right? We know who we're up against, we know who they are, and we know exactly where to point, aim our fight. It's disheartening to see people in positions of power get more power and be in positions to influence laws and policies and even culture to such a large degree. But it also is the catalyst for so many of us jumping in and joining this fight.
Well, Tarana, we really appreciate you coming on the show this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.